Welcome to Season 9 of Purposeful Empathy, a show dedicated to amplifying the voices of people from across the globe who believe the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. Today's episode is brought to you by Grand Huron International, an on-demand coaching provider for individuals and companies. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of Purposeful Empathy. Today I'm joined by Jonathan Juravich, who is Ohio's 2018 Teacher of the Year. Congratulations, first of all, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Jonathan believes we can leverage small moments to significantly impact others. And I promise we're going to come back to that. He's in the 18th year of teaching as an art educator at Liberty Tree Elementary in Powell, Ohio, where he oversees school culture, partnerships, and social and emotional learning. He also partners with WASU at PBS to help develop the digital series Drawing with Mr. J, where students explore their emotions through simple and hilarious drawing challenges. We'll talk about that too. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I know you're in your classroom. I know it's your first day back. I mean, I kind of feel that that's like we're right in a sweet spot because I know what it's like the first day back in the building. And like September's like that new feeling, like everything's fresh and new binders, new pens, new everything. So congrats on a new academic year about to start. Can you start with a little bit about yourself, because I don't actually know much about you, and why you love teaching so much?
Well, I actually grew up the child of two artists outside of Pittsburgh. And these two amazing artist parents of mine, they gave me the world. They took us to museums. We lived in a forest. So they would take us out into the woods. I had this really creative, wonderful life that I didn't realize was so. And as I was going through school, everyone just thought I would become an artist too, like the family trade, right? And but I didn't want to be, because as teenagers and young adults, we all push back against the things that our parents do and want for us. And so I was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then one day it was my parents who actually were like, well, you are a teacher. That's who you are. And I thought so much about it. And art education was that, as we talk about the sweet spots, right? Like art education was what I think my calling was, because it got to combine these things that I loved. And I was thinking about providing students, my future students, about the opportunities I had as a kid, because I know not everybody has that type of upbringing. And so I really looked into art education and haven't looked back since. It's just since then that I think even in my first years of teaching, I realized that art education is my vehicle to have important conversations with kids about empathy and awareness. And I use that vehicle every day to start those conversations in this classroom.
Oh, okay. I can't wait to talk all about this. But I'm going to ask a little quick follow-up question right away, since we just talked about you. You know, you were awarded in 2018 Teacher of the Year for the entire state. And let's move humility aside. Why do you suppose your teaching is so valued? Like, what is it about your teaching or your philosophy of education that you think, elevates your teaching so that you get recognized that way? Just out of curiosity.
Whoa. So what I hope that people see in my room is that I have high expectations for my students. I do. I have high expectations for myself, for those around me, but it's done in a caring environment where kids feel encouraged and want to reach for those high expectations. So I have high expectations for them with their art, but then also with the way that they interact with one another, the goals that they set for themselves. And so I hope that's what, the state of Ohio saw in me, but then also that I hope that's what the parents of the students see, because I'm very much a practicing educator. This week, I will have 760 kids that come through this room. That's how many kids will be at this building. And I hope that every single one of them feels that level of encouragement and support, so that they take risks and they reach for those challenges. So I hope that's what they see, and that it's fun. I have so much fun doing what I do every day, and that's contagious. So,
You know, one of the chapters in my book is about empathy superstars, and so I'm talking about like people who are on the front line of healthcare, obviously, and psychologists and humanitarians. But I include teachers in that because I think teachers have deep empathy for their students. And I was reading statistics about the churn, the turnover, the dropout rate of teaching staff in the United States in particular through COVID and sort of what's going on, the polemic, the ideological divide, then the expectations around classroom management, in addition to all the curriculum stuff. And then it just seems like teaching is becoming such a tough profession. And I just wonder if you could speak to how you keep your enthusiasm, your optimism, your well-being going.
I think a lot of it comes from having support systems. And that's what I'm trying to do. I focus on building culture at this school. It's on top of teaching all of those kids. But our goal is always to create a culture that is supportive, that you can reach out to one another and say, I just don't get it, or I'm having a hard time. As adults, adult to adult, to say like, I don't know what to do here, or this particular kid has challenged me in ways that I do not understand. And I hope that that's what we're instilling in our new teachers that come into this building, either fresh out of college or transferring in. For me, it's having colleagues that I have fun with too. There is a teacher at our building that we've been at this building together since it opened, and we got into this weird little like game back and forth of scaring each other. And I actually really do not like surprises for myself. I like them for other people. But sometimes we will like hide behind trash cans and jump out and scare each other. And like the kids are all in on it. So they see us having fun as adults. And that contagious aspect that we talked about earlier. Because that's the thing. This is a weighty profession. It has been challenging. There are things that are just really difficult, but there's also so much beauty and joy in it too. You have to actively work for it. It's just not waiting right there on the surface for it, for you.
Yeah, and I think the asking for help actually is a great segue to the question that I wanted to ask, which is around self-awareness. So in order to be able to ask for help or to be able to share how you're feeling, you have to actually know how you're feeling, right? So what role does self-awareness have in discussions about empathy with youth? So let's get into the empathy dialogue now.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it all starts with awareness. Everything, like our whole world. Because at our school, that's one of our like pillar like traits that we talk about all the time is awareness. And we talk about it in terms of noticing what is happening in and around you so that you can make a choice. And my hope always is that that choice is empathetic. And that noticing, because it's sometimes like, I often equate it to the kids, like you see a plastic bag floating outside and you're like, do I pick it up or not? Right? Like you're making a choice in that moment. So when we're talking about self-awareness, we're aware of our surroundings. We're aware of how we're feeling in the moment. And then we slowly, after we're having an awareness of ourselves, we're able to notice other people. We're able to notice other circumstances. We can relate. And it's that's what then leads to those empathetic actions and reactions.
So what do you do about these teachable moments? Like, you know, once in a while, you'll be in the semester and a school shooting will happen, or, you know, a tragic circumstance like George Floyd getting murdered. Like, you know, these moments where it's so part of the collective consciousness and discourse, and to ignore it does, like, I mean, everybody's thinking about it. It's like heavy on everybody's minds. Like, how is that incorporated into your classroom discussions, out of curiosity?
Yeah, well, okay. Can you see over my shoulder this side?
Yeah.
There is a brightly colored mood meter on the wall.
Yeah.
And we oftentimes talk about the fact that it's like when someone asks us how we're doing, right? It's like good, fine, right? We don't know because we haven't been taught to, or, you know, we forget that like we're allowed to have a range of emotions and we're all having different ones all the time. Because the things that you just said, some families don't talk to their kids about those circumstances. Some are very transparent and tell them everything. I have 2 children. With one of mine, my 9-year-old, we oftentimes say, do you want us to talk to you as an adult or a kid? She's self-aware enough, which is amazing, that she'll tell us like how much information she wants to be told. Working with other kids, and I have to be aware that there are so many different types of families in this room that using something like a mood meter to discuss, like, how are you feeling right now? What do you need from me? And validating the fact that all of those feelings are valid because they are theirs. Even that discussion builds empathy. The fact that I'm in the room with someone who is feeling distraught or at a loss or confused, whereas I might just feel really hopeful in this moment. Same thing's true with teachers. I talk all the time about the fact that we oftentimes greet each other and we say like, how are you? And what is the first thing everyone says?
Fine.
Fine. We're good. And you're like, no, you're not. You are something totally other than that. So I've leaned into, in the mornings, I will say, good morning, good to see you, have a great day. If I have time for a follow-up question, I'll say like, how are you? And when they respond with good or fine, I'm like, really, how are you? Right? Tell me. Because that builds that self-awareness that is then sparking in them that there's empathy for other people. Other people are feeling different ways for different reasons.
I'm thinking that mood meter that I see like just up there above my finger, right? Yeah, the yellow, green, blue, and red. Just for any parent or whoever is listening, because I can imagine leaders in the corporate world could also use these with their staff. Walk us through what these colors mean and tell us about this tool.
Yeah, mood meters are available online. Just Google mood meter. And there's a ton of different kinds. The one that I have there is one that I found. I'm an art teacher. I really like the colors, right? So typically what happens is at the bottom of the mood meter on the lower level are emotions that we in society deem as more like, I don't want to say negative, right? It's like sadness, like we said, distraught, anger. The blue ones are the ones in this example are the ones that use less energy, right? Which you're feeling down. The magenta red ones are those negative feelings that you're feeling that have take more energy. Anger, right, is one of those. At the top, similar thing. The green are your like mellow, calm, at ease, right? Like lower energy, whereas the yellow is high energy, like ecstatic. So, and so the idea is that you can trace where you are and identify it. Like identify, where are you? So in my classroom, sometimes I'll be like, where are you right now? And just to check in where they are. And then do you need anything? Or are you okay just identifying that emotion and processing it for a little while? I've led professional development with teachers where someone made a little sticky note version of themselves and moved themselves around throughout the day as awareness. But then I have to realize that like sometimes it has nothing to do with me if they're feeling like tired, right? Maybe they stayed up late, you know, maybe they got up too early. Like I have to realize that that's not all about me. And honestly, I use one because I have a little one in my car. The guy at the coffee shop who I see every morning always asks, how am I doing? And I have to come up with, how am I? So I'll like look at it and be like, I'm feeling hopeful about today. And I'll go in and he will always ask, he will always have a follow-up question. So for me, it's great for building my awareness too.
I love it. So okay, that's an amazing tool. And I'm also starting to be curious now about, you know, do you use breathing techniques? Like what other awareness building tools do you have in your toolbox?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's as much as like, I read books with kids all the time. I read books with kids here. I read books with my own children at home, and it's hitting pause, right? You know, whenever you're reading, like sometimes I read a book and I'm just like going, I've read this 42 times. I'm like going through it, but there are so many moments for us to just hit pause, to become aware of the characters are on the pages. Is there something like that came up within the book that like I actually have a question for you. Like that has nothing to do with the book. Like, let's hit pause for a second and talk about this. The same thing's true with TV shows. I love streaming for that because at home, there are so many times where we just hit pause and we talk about what just happened on the screen. Whether it's like, I've got to answer a question about what that means, or how do you think that character's feeling right now? And we talk about it as a family. That wasn't necessarily possible when I was a kid. But it's a huge thing that the difference though then is the adults, we have to be paying attention and not on our phone so that we can have those moments, right? So it's also raising my awareness as well. So yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so how do you think adults can model empathy and show up as more empathic for by osmosis, the kids to sort of pick up on what's going on and learn from the behavior?
Yeah. Kids are watching all the time, whether we know it or not. Like, not even just our own kids, the kids in this classroom, the kids that are at Target with you, like they are watching. They're learning how to do life because of the actions that we have, right? The way that we respond to other people, the way that we roll our eyes, the words that we say, even the ways we laugh, like they are picking up on all those little cues because they're learning how to become the adults that they one day will become. And I think that that's really weighty when you think about it. And I think about the things that I say and the ways I say them that my parents did, or a teacher that I had, and how that became an ingrained part of who I am. And when you think about that, like that's huge. So in that, we have to be careful about how we talk to other adults or how we're talking to other kids, the tones that we're using. My face, I'm not sure if you could tell, is pretty expressive. So I oftentimes have to like check myself and be like, how am I responding in this moment? Simple things. We need to say, please, thank you, and I'm sorry in front of kids. We don't do it enough. I think about the number of times where, I mean, my wife and I will just be talking and we'll forget to say please and thank you to one another. And so we've become really intentional about doing that, because if we want that to come from our kids, right? We always say like, oh, what's the magic words, right? Like if we want them to do it, we have to do it as well. We were just at an aquarium this weekend, my kids and I, and the person checking us in, like I just kept saying, oh, I'm sorry, I can't find the ticket. Like I'm like scrolling through emails and he's like, you're okay. And my kids are just standing there patiently waiting. And they said, thank you as we're going through. And the guy was like, wow, okay. And I don't know, that's just how we're living life, using those simple words that, you know, we want given back to us.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's those little things. I mean, we could talk all day long about those instances, like putting shopping carts away where they belong and, you know, like the way we are interacting in the car, you know, our resting faces, like, are they in a smile or are they just glaring? Like there's those little tiny things that we're doing every day that are modeling for, again, not only our kids, but like kids in general.
Today's episode was brought to you by Grand Huron International, an on-demand coaching provider for individuals and companies. So you've been teaching for 18 years. I've been teaching for about a dozen. The age range is different, but I've noticed over the decade, like the shift has been enormous in terms of how kids feel about themselves and how they engage in class conversations in a different way. So I'm wondering what you're noticing and what you think could be helpful to think about for parents when it comes to, you know, children's relationship with social media.
I know, which is weird because it's like I'm of a generation where it's like we posted every month that our kid was born the first year, right? And it's like we laid them in the same giant frame and it's been a part of their life. It's not like we asked them, hey, would you like to be posted on social media? But now there's times where we'll say like, hey, I'm gonna share this picture. And my daughter the other day said, I Googled myself and a picture of me from my second birthday came up. And I was like, ugh, well, it's probably because I used that photo for something I was doing. Are you okay with that? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay with it. But it's, even that's tricky, right? But I think what's important is it's like our obsession with likes and hearts and thumbs ups and all of that doesn't become our kids' reality. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, when I share something, especially professional, and I was like, oh, people are gonna love this, and then like 5 people like give it a thumbs up, immediately I'm like, no one likes this. Right. But meanwhile, maybe they do. They just were like, oh, that's great. And they didn't like thumbs up it. Or people that have told me that like I have not engaged with them on social media. And I was like, I'm so sorry. It's not personal. I just didn't get on in the past 3 days. Right. So I think we're walking this very careful line right now, because social media does amazing things for us. It connects us. It's just making sure that we have conversations with kids about like when that's happened to us. Like, oh, only 5 people gave me a thumbs up, and that's okay, because I'm sure other people engaged with it. And this is just a way for me to share what we're doing. And oh gosh, but it's so tricky.
Tricky. Yeah, but you don't. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was kind of almost predicting that you would say something about the mental health crisis among kids that you're seeing, because when you were talking about like parents modeling good behavior, I find that social media is a very, very toxic environment, and kids are feeling so poor about themselves because there's the FOMO, and there's, everything is touched up on social media, so that there's just this sense of, it's not modeling the best of human nature, it's modeling like, people who can anonymously respond to something and say nasty things. Like, I was just thought you were going to bark up that tree, but you went in a different direction, which was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there is all of that. I think that is all completely true. Like, there is a lot of that going on. But I think it's also as we talk about modeling, it's how we're using it and why, right? There's the same teacher where we jump out and scare each other. She always jokingly talks about becoming TikTok famous with her class. And like, they all think it's hilarious. And she'll talk about like the number of like followers or something she has is like 10, and it involves her kids. And like, and I think that having that type of attitude for something like that and being like goofy about it and honest, and I think that's what we need more of. Because then when the kids are inevitably joining these platforms, or whatever new platforms coming out tomorrow that we don't know about yet, they'll have that sense of like, what is this for? Is this for communicating with the world? Is it for forming connections, or is it for becoming famous? Because that's never really doesn't work out for everybody.
You know what I'm finding, Jonathan? I'm finding that your positivity is not only earnest, but also contagious. So like, I'm loving our conversation. And I want to go back to something that I read out in your bio, which is that you believe the small moments can be leveraged to create like a big impact. What do you mean by that? And give me some examples.
I love Helen Keller. Personal reasons why she has been like kind of this like hero in my life, but she had this phrase attributed to her that was, I long to accomplish a great and noble task, but it is my chief duty to accomplish small tasks as if they're great and noble. And what I love about that is we sometimes long for those, or aspire for these big moments where we can have this like, we've made it, we did this great thing, when really every single day we are faced with these little tiny moments where we can make an impact on other people. The pleases and thank yous, right? The helping someone across the street, which happens interestingly where I live a lot. The putting the shopping carts back, like those small things have an impact, because again, we're all aware that they're happening. We all notice when those things happen. I know I have been accused of being toxically positive. And I don't like when that is used as a weapon. Like, my own optimism because that's what it is. My own optimism is used as a weapon against me when it's not that. I am an optimistic person, but it's finding those small moments. We have a lot of new staff members joining our school this year, and I made little door hangers that just said like, hey, we're happy you're here. Thank you for joining us. And I hung them on all their doors. And it's like, it was something small. Yes, it took me about 10 minutes to put together, but I know that when they come into the building, that it'll be something that welcomes them into the space.
Great.
The grocery store, whenever they've got the like, I'm still pretty flowers, right? That are almost on their way out. Last year, I bought a whole bunch of bouquets of those and then split them all up and put them in tiny little like champagne glasses for the dollar store and like pass them out around the building. And I mean, it's like something super small, right? I didn't redo a library. I didn't like bring somebody a big fancy check, but like sometimes just a tiny little bouquet of flowers can make someone's day. So it's like seeking out those moments and what fits for your personality. This is my personality. It's what I do. But sometimes it might just be, like writing a sweet note to someone or sending an email that's just like, I was thinking about you. Because when we get those notes, when we get those reminders that we matter, as we keep coming back to, it becomes contagious. We want to share that with other people.
Makes me think of the video that I saw that went viral where there's, and I don't know if you know which video or which teacher I'm talking about, but this one teacher, maybe there's a few now that do it, that have like a different handshake for each student that comes through their class. Like that's something that you respect and admire because it means that it's signaling how much intention and care is embedded in the relationship, right?
So this shirt I'm wearing, right? 11 years ago, I had a kid named Jack who came into my room, and every day he would come in and be all like bright-eyed, and then he would sit down and be all like depressed the entire time. He'd sit there with his head down. It's like, what is going on? So, you know me, after the third time this is happening, I was like, Jack, what's going on? And he said, I just wanted to match you. Turns out I'm a short person. I buy clothes at the Target kids department sometimes, and I and Jack had the same plaid shirt. And he just wanted to connect with me, just wanted to match. And so what we did is I decided, okay, every time you have an art day, we will wear these shirts together. But then what ended up happening is other kids picked up on it, and then other kids. And so one day I had to decide that I was just always going to wear a plaid shirt of some kind. And so for 11 years, every day, I have worn some form of plaid shirt. And it started because one kid wanted to make a connection with me, and now it is part of who I am. People notice it after they've been around me a couple times, but they don't really know that it's all because of making connections with students. And that is something small, right? I changed the wardrobe that I have at home, and by doing that, I'm making connections with kids.
Well, not only is that very Steve Jobs of you, but also I imagine that during the holiday season, you're getting a lot of plaid shirts as gifts now, right? I mean, I think the word has probably spread.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been 11 years, right? So even kids who graduate from high school, their parents will send me like their senior picture, and they'll be wearing a plaid shirt, and they'll be like, oh, he's wearing his Mr. J shirt. I was like, it's just so yeah, I know. But small moments to make connections and make a bigger impact.
Sure. What do you think about the connection between empathy and art? So why do you think art curriculum matters so much? I mean, I know why I think, even though I wasn't exposed to a lot of art education. So yeah, go ahead. Tell me what you think why it matters.
Well, I mean, earlier what we were talking about is this sense of self-awareness, right? Art brings about that sense of self-awareness. When done in a way that's not everyone making the same exact like snowman with a scarf, right? But given the opportunity to express themselves, explore emotions, explore identity, we're given this opportunity to put that out visually into the world. And that happens in here all the time. What also happens is that kids are aware of other kids' artwork. And so in my classroom all the time, we talk about our different skills, our different tastes, our different views, and how that impacts the work that we're making and the artwork that we're making. And so, yes, that's happening all the time. But then also our discussions that we're having about our artwork. We have to have empathy. When someone is sharing themselves fully and vulnerably, we have to have empathy for one another, and the ability to listen, to honor the fact that they're being vulnerable enough to share this information with us. That's all happening in this space, even with small children in kindergarten, right? So imagine as those kids are getting older, the skills that they're learning while making art.
Yeah. Beautiful. But art is one of the things that gets cut quickest, right? That and phys ed, which is so hard. I mean, I remember a long time ago hearing, this was the founder of Alibaba in China, saying, look, the robots are coming and AI is coming. They'll be able to do all the computational stuff, you know, even analysis. What we really need to spend time focusing on is things that robots can't do the same way, like collaborate, like, you know, understand feelings, you know, all that creative stuff, all, you know, the stuff that like elevates us as human beings, right? That makes us, you know, have a light that robots will not have.
Yes.
Ever.
Well, and part of that is advocacy. I mean, part of it in my world all the time, I view my work with students as advocacy for the future of art education in our building, in our district, and making sure that I'm drawing those connections to collaboration and communication and creativity. Like all those things are happening in here, and it's important, it's critical. So I need to communicate that with parents through the artwork that's created, through social media, which we come back to, right? And that's one way that I'm able to share in real time what students are doing in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so you mentioned you called Mr. J, and you have this show or this program that you're doing with PBS, Drawing with Mr. J. What is all of that about, and how does it support sort of SEL, social emotional learning?
Yeah. So we are in our third season right now. Actually, a new episode, I think, launched today. I have to go look. But what it is it's a drawing series that's completely free. It's available at wosu.org/Mr. J, MRJ. And each episode is about 4.5 minutes long. And the way that it works is I'm on the screen and I give a super goofy drawing prompt where it's like a cat attacking a city or a plant with a face. And then I sit there using just like sticky notes and a permanent marker, and I draw. And while I'm drawing, I'm like talking through what I'm drawing and the shapes that I'm using, but I'm always prompting kids to like be creative. So really, as they're drawing with me with this drawing challenge, they could draw exactly what I'm drawing or use it as a jumping off point. And that's what I hope happens. Then this little animated version of me appears on the screen, and it like does an emotional check-in, which like seems to come out of nowhere, right? Where it's like, okay, let's check in. What does it feel like or look like to be angry? What do your eyebrows do? What does your mouth do? Does your body tense up? And it's like asking all these questions of kids about how we express feelings. And then the last segment of this like 4.5 minutes, so a lot happens, is about me tying the drawing and the emotions back to my reality. So like as an adult, I get angry. As an adult, I get frustrated, I get disappointed, I get joyful, I get hopeful. And I talk through a story or an experience in which I experienced that. And then at the end, I always talk about like driving it home to say like, use your drawing to talk to a parent or trusted adult, right? And so that's the structure of it, right? But it's been wonderful. It's been a great way to share what I do here in my classroom with kids all over the country. It's funny, there's like little pockets like in Illinois and in Northern California, where there's probably kids that know more about the program there than my own students in my classroom. But there's also like for parents and caregivers and teachers, there's also like a companion guide that comes with each episode that has discussion questions and like just sit around and talk about the feelings they're experiencing. There's book suggestions, activities. So really, this 4.5 minutes could become like a week's long experience. So yeah.
So my daughter's 6. How could she benefit from it? Could children around the world? We go to the website you just gave us, which we're going to include in the description below, and we watch. Yeah. Free.
And free, completely free. And yes, it started right before the pandemic. And then in the midst of the pandemic, the episodes that we had already recorded were coming out, and families were sitting and drawing together. And what's cool about it is, yeah, you can do it once and draw exactly what I'm drawing. And then like the plant with the face, it's talking about being prickly. You know, that feeling where it's like, we just need alone time, give me my space. So I draw a cactus. But then in it, I'm like talking about like, you could draw a different plant with a face. So the number of times that you could extend and create new learning from it is endless. It's endless. But yeah, it's completely free and available for anyone to enjoy. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do this with my daughter. We're going to do the cactus episode, and I'm going to post in the comments below how it goes. And anybody else who's watching any of your episodes, feel free to post a comment in the comment section below about how it went. Jonathan, I adore you, and I want to ask you a final question. Thank you so much for making the time, especially again on your first day back at school. I know you got a lot to organize. I love asking my guests at the end of the interview if they can think of a time when they were on the receiving end of empathy and what it meant for them. So I'll ask you, can you think of a time when you were on the receiving end of empathy, and what did that mean for you?
Yeah. Okay. So let's get a weird start to this, but I am a vegetarian. So are my wife, my 2 kids. But I also became lactose intolerant when I was 30, which means that basically I'm an accidental vegan, right? Mm. And everyone always has questions about that. What do you eat? What do you not eat? Like, everyone is just fascinated by the fact that I'm still alive, right? But really, there's plenty. Don't worry, I'm okay. But there have been 2 instances where that has prompted me to feel included. Because oftentimes food is a way to include, but it also alienates, right? Mm-hmm. When there aren't options. And that happens a lot, right? And normally I'm like, it's not a big deal. I'm fine. I don't make a big deal about it. But I went and visited a friend for the first time at their house for a couple days. And they had purchased vegan ice cream, vegan butter, vegan creamers, vegan, like anything in the store they had. It's vegan yogurts. And I remember being there and thinking, like, they had vegan cheese curls, to which like the kids were like, what is this? But they all ate it and tried it. And I remember just feeling like they bought things for me to enjoy at their home that I don't even buy for myself, because I'm always like looking at my budget and what do I need to buy my kids, and to be able to feel in a way that I was thought after, that I was cared for, that I was included, meant the world. And to know that they were willing to try this food along with me, to the fact where now they only use vegan creamer at their home because they like the way it tasted better, right? So it's those moments, right? When when someone makes the decision to include us and to come along on that journey with us. And there's a couple similar instances that's happened before, with a small first grader last year, who bought me a gift card to a vegan restaurant. And she said, I knew you would like it there. It's like, these kids are listening, right? So.
That's beautiful. And it circles back to what you said earlier, and I think is the major takeaway for me of today's conversation, which is that, having empathy for others does not necessarily mean like the big ticket stuff when somebody's going through a tragic circumstance or a loss or any of those, but can happen all the time in small ways to pay attention, that you've been listening, or that you've noticed something about me, or that you care about me, so you want to make that connection. So yeah, I think for the rest of the day, Annika's coming home from camp, and it's the end of the afternoon here in Montreal as we're taping, that I'm going to be a little bit more aware this evening about how I can be mindful of the ways that it's my small acts can make them feel special. So thank you for that, Jonathan.
And it's also giving us the grace. We have to give ourselves the grace that we're not always going to get it right. Yeah. We're not always going to be the most empathetic person in the room. We're not always going to be the most aware. And there are certain moments that have completely taught me that I am human, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also giving ourselves the grace that we're always learning. It's not like we cross off the list that we were like, oh, I was empathetic today, right?
Yeah, done. Check box.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So empathy for others and self-empathy. I love that. Well, thank you so much for making the time. Enjoy your academic year. I'm sure that you're 700 and how many again? 80?
760.
760 students are going to love you, and I wish you a great school year ahead. Thanks to everyone who's been watching and listening. We'll see you next week at Purposeful Empathy.
What if you had access to your own council of coaches to help you break free of your thinking clutter, make that important decision, and liberate you from whatever is holding you back? At Grand Huron International, you get to choose the coach of your choice anytime from anywhere. Visit grandhuroninternational.ca and harness the power of on-demand coaching today.